The following is a production of the Ultimate Fantasy Sports Network.
Welcome back to UFHL Now. I'm your host, Kyle Hall, and we have a great episode for you today. A little later on, we'll be joined by Outlaws GM Nick Uttley, and as well as Mr. Insider, as always, Larry Fisher. But before we get to those segments, let's take you around the UFHL and show you what happened this last week. For the standings, we had no change in the top five. The Titans are still number one, followed by the Royals and West Coast Express. As you can see here, the Grizzlies and Rock Republic round out the top five. Where we did see some change was for the bottom five there. The Gators jumped the Stingrays into 7th place. Stingrays dropping down to 8th there. So our guest last week, Ryan Smeltzer, will be a big fan of that jump. Maybe a little bump for being our guest last week on the UFHL Now. So the Gators move up to 7th, Stingrays down to 8th, followed by the Yeti and Ice Vikings there at 10. Kamikaze stays at the 6th spot. The Titans now have a 125-point lead on the Royals to stay in first place. You can see it pretty bunched up there between 4 and 5 there. The Grizzlies and Rock Republic are getting pretty close, as well as West Coast Express, only 176 points behind the Titans there, and right on the Royals' heels. So top five, extremely strong. The Gators there at 404 behind are closing in Kamikaze, who are at 353 behind, but still a little ways out of the top five there for our friends, the Gators. But overall, I mean, not too much movement in the top 10 in general, but it's always good to see a guest of the show come on and get an immediate bump the next week. So always a big fan of that. Now let's take you to see who's hot and who's not this week in the UFHL. Our first who's hot is my guy, Chris Kreider. The Rangers forward had a huge week for the Godfathers. 26.97 fantasy points in the last 3 games. 5 goals, 2 assists, and 7 points this last week. He had a hat trick the other night. I believe he had 4 points in the game. He now has 29 goals in the season, which is tied for the most in the NHL with Alex Ovechkin. A career year so far for Kreider, who's finally going to break the 30-goal plateau, a plateau that most Ranger fans have been wanting to see him hit since he was a first-round pick way back in, I think it was 2010. So it's been a long road coming for Chris Kreider, but awesome breakout year for him. The Godfathers who acquired him this last offseason that deal is really paying off for them. So great job by them to pick up Kreider, and a huge week for the Rangers forward. Our second who's hot this week, defenseman. Now, not the defenseman you think you'd see from the Pittsburgh Penguins, but Michael Matheson, a huge week, 25.46 fantasy points in his last 4 games, 3 goals, 3 assists, and 6 points. He had 2 game winners in those 3 goals for the Eliminators. Guy who's having a really good year, 18 points so far in the season. When you think of the Pittsburgh Penguins, you think of Chris Letang, but Matheson's been quietly really strong for that team, and the Penguins are rolling. They're really hot right now, and Sidney Crosby's a player who just missed out on our Who's Hot list this week. So Penguins in general are hot. The Eliminators, really good defenseman here, and I've good salary cap pickup too for them. In his second year there in Pittsburgh, he's been a very good player for them on the blue line. Our third who's hot this week is a goaltender from the Blues. You might not think it's going to be Ville Husso. So the backup goaltender to Jordan Binnington, probably one of the best 1-2 punches of any goaltending duo in the NHL. But the North Stars goalie got the last 3 starts this last week. He had 24.9 fantasy points. He went 3-0 this week with a 1.33 goals allowed and 960 save percentage. Just an incredible week from the Blues goaltender. The North Stars have to love that, have to see him getting a little more share of that net there in St. Louis. And if he keeps playing like this, he's going to take more and more games away from Binnington, which I'm sure the North Stars will love to see. Now let's get into our Who's Not Hot list this last week. It seems like every time we go to the Who's Not Hot list, the next week they prove us wrong. Let's hope these guys do that as well. Former Vezina Trophy winner Connor Hellebuyck of the Grizzlies. Really tough week. 8 fantasy points only in his last 4 games. A 2-point average is not what you want to see from Hellebuyck. I'm sure the Grizzlies are not very happy with his performance this week. Neither are the Winnipeg Jets. 0-2-2 this last. They lost 2 games in shootout this last week. He had a 3.25 goals allowed, 894 save percentage. Doesn't sound terrible, but overall for a guy of his caliber, just a really tough week, especially when you get 2 points a game from him. Obviously the Grizzlies are expecting more out of their former Vezina Trophy winner. Our second who's not hot this week is 44-year-old Zdeno Chara, the Snipers, the Isles defenseman. He had a rough week, only 6.53 points in the last 4 games. He put up 0 on the score sheet this last week. The Islanders are actually playing a little bit better from, their COVID reprieve and everything else that's gone on with that team. It's been a really rough season on Long Island. And you got to think with all those games coming up, is the 44-year-old Chara going to make it through this stretch run? If he can, the Snipers will pay off. Will be a big payoff for them with a lot of points here towards the end of the year. But you got to think Chara's going to need a blow here and there. But the guy's an animal. Hopefully he can turn it around for the Snipers. But a rough week for the old defenseman. And then our last who's not is his former goaltender there in Boston. Just came back, Tuukka Rask. It was a rough one. It was a rough game against Carolina, which really skews his numbers here. But just 1.14 fantasy points in the 2 games he played this last week. Tuukka's getting right back into the lineup after taking the first half of the year to recover from some injury and also kind of get his head together after semi-retiring, whatever that was this last offseason. But he went 1-1 with a 5.25 goals allowed and just an .806 save percentage. I think it was 7 goals he allowed in the game against Carolina. So not Rask's best performance, but I'm sure as he settles in, more and more of the Eliminators will get a nice boost here towards the end of the season with Rask and the Bruins making their playoff run. A guy who's proven time and time again that he's a top goaltender in this league. So I'm sure Tuukka will turn it around. Just a tough week for the Eliminators goaltender. Now let's take a look at a couple of the trades that happened this week. Now these are just 2 of I think we have 4 trades that happened in the UFHL this week, but here's 2 of them that we want to spotlight, and we'll cover a couple more of them later on in our Insider segment with Larry. So the first one is a guy who I think is going to be, when Carolina signed him away from the Rangers, I know it was a great pickup for them, and he's proven to be a good depth defense. Was the Kamikazes pick up Brendan Smith, who I think will see more and more playing time down the stretch. I know he's starting to see some time over Ethan Bear the last couple of weeks here. So interesting to see him getting more playing time. And the Red Army received the Bentley Jacks 2024 second round pick, a pick that Kamikaze acquired last week in a trade. And then our second trade of the week is another team who was active last week. The Royals acquire Ryan Lombard, who this is a guy who I think has been one of the unsung heroes down in Florida. A really great season. I've seen the Panthers play a couple times this season. He stands out every time on the ice. He hits everything that moves. He's one of those agitating guys that he stands out wherever he goes. So a good pickup from the Royals. I think he's a very good player for a very good team. And when you play in a team like Florida, even if you play on a bottom 6 role, you're going to see some points there just because of the high caliber players that are around you. And Lombard puts himself in good position to score some goals and get some assists there. So I think a good pickup from the Royals. And the Warriors received quite the return. Liam Foudy, John Farinacci, and then also Nick Ritchie, who has had a rough season this year. A guy who I think in the offseason a lot of teams wanted, has not gotten off to a good start, and who knows where his future leads. But hopefully he turns it around. The Warriors get a nice 3-man return for 1. So all in all, I think a pretty fair trade there. But I think Lombard is going to be a nice addition for the Royals down the stretch run here. Now we get into our Players of the Week, presented by Elite Prospects. And what do you know? Our 3 Players of the Week are also our 3 players of Who's Hot. So Ville Husso will be the goaltender, Michael Matheson, the defenseman, and Chris Kreider, the forward. Chris Kreider was also named the number 1 star of the NHL this last week and the NHLPA. So congrats to those 3, and congrats to the North Stars, Eliminators, and Godfathers on their 3 players being named the Players of the Week. And now I want to bring in our interview guest for this week, Outlaws GM Nick Uttley. Nick, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Kyle. Thanks for having me.
How you doing? How's the season going so far? How you feeling?
We're feeling okay. We're feeling pretty good about ourselves. We had a bit of depth issues, so I've been addressing that, and we've taken a bit of a step back. We were 5th last year. We still have room to maybe get close to that, but not expecting to be at the top by the end of it.
Yeah, you guys are sitting 13th overall right now, and I believe you're 4th in the HOWE division. So, I mean, you're right there in the playoff mix. Is there any positions or moves that you want to make or area you want to improve on to hit that playoff stretch?
We feel comfortable about where we're at as a team. I don't think we're going to fall out of the playoffs barring injuries, but I'm always looking to improve. But also, I think the prices are very high at this time in the UFHL. And unless I can get something that makes sense long term, it probably won't happen. But I'm open to anything with any player, actually.
Now let's talk about my favorite player in your team, Artemi Panarin. If he can stay on the ice, this guy is unbelievable. I think he's the best winger in all of hockey. 37 games this year. He's got 11 goals and 32 assists, so well over a point per game. 148 fantasy points for you so far. So, how much do you love watching his play every night?
We love Panarin. I went and got him because we didn't have a superstar. I gave up a lot to get him. I gave up guys like Dylan Larkin to get him. Marcia Show. We also got Rust in that trade, so I mean that was a nice little addition as well. But we needed the star power, and Panarin's definitely a top 10 player in the league. There's no question about that. So we love to have
Russ,
him.
Russ is another guy who I watch him a lot in Pittsburgh. The Rangers play him a lot. First off, I don't think the guy's ever turned down a shot in his life. He puts everything on net, which obviously is a good thing for fantasy wise. But also in the 19 games he's played this year, he's got 9 goals and 15 assists. He leads your team in fantasy points per game as well. So if you get a healthy Russ down the stretch, obviously that'll be a huge boost for your team.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what he's done since he came back from injury. I mean, I think he had 15 points in 6 games. He came back, his first game back, he had 5 points, and we unfortunately didn't have the information that he was going to be back first thing in the morning. They had a morning game, so we didn't get those 5 points for our fantasy roster, which hurt. But nonetheless, it's amazing what he's doing right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's paying off big time for that. And the Penguins in general are red hot. And you know that from your defenseman Chris Letang there, who's had a monster season for you and for the Penguins. And also, I want to talk about your goaltending situation. So you have Saros right now, who I think might be the front runner for the Vezina. I believe he's still leading all goaltenders in fantasy points this year. I mean, a guy who I think kind of sat idly there in Nashville for a couple of years, learned from a Hall of Famer, and now he's just taken off. So, I mean, it must be great knowing that you have probably the top goaltender right now in the league.
Who can complain about a guy like that, right? I mean, I knew we had a good goalie in Saros, but I wouldn't have expected him to, just carry on what Rene was doing. It's pleasant surprise at a really good cap hit at $5 million long term. I mean, I don't think he's going anywhere.
Yeah, no. And Jake Allen, unfortunately, just got injured. It looks like an eight week. I think I saw this morning was 8 weeks. They're thinking sometime mid-March return. Is that an area you're looking to improve on right now? What's the plan for goaltending going forward?
If we can find a viable backup, we'll bring that in. But at the same time, when you got a guy like Saros, I mean, he's playing most of the games. I wouldn't say we're desperate, but if the right guy comes around or the right guy pops up on waivers, we'll probably be in on it.
Who's the toughest GM to deal with in this league?
Scott Lowater, which is who I got Panarin from. That guy is like he is relentless. That guy, he will boom, like let's do this. He's very one-minded. When he wants to get someone, and it's hard to shake him off. He's like a little hornet or something like that.
Is there a team you just despise in this league? Is there anyone that you look at and you're like, oh man, I just hate those guys?
No, I don't hate anyone. There's people that are easier to deal with than others, but no, I don't hate anyone. We're all here to build this thing and make it a bigger thing, and I think we're all on track. So we're all working together at the end.
I'm trying to drum up some rivalry here. Come on, I'm trying to get some blood flowing in the chat a little bit.
We do have a lot of banter with the Royals.
Okay.
We,
All right.
we have, I've had so many trade talks with the Royals that just haven't amounted to anything. And I think it's more of a, I wouldn't say I'd say it's more of a love-hate relationship than a hate relationship, but we do banter with them and fight them a bit.
If it's not the Outlaws in the championship, what teams can you see going there? What teams do you like the rosters the most going forward?
I've always liked how Rock Republic deals with their roster. Now, I don't know if that translates to the championship, but I voted for them for GM of the Year last year because they utilize man games better than any other GM in the league. And I believe to follow that motto is the way to go, because you need players, depth players, to be at the top, and without those depth players, you won't be there. So I think the Rock Republic overall give themselves a chance every year and are always near the top, and that would be who I would give my props to.
And you and I have talked on the side about this league in general, but how special is this league? And obviously, we both want to see it grow, like you said, into something that I think more and more people should catch on to, and how great it is to see professional fantasy hockey like this. But how great is this league to you, and can you just summarize your involvement in it?
I was very lucky to stumble upon this league. I didn't think anything like this would ever exist, to be honest. And I was just lucky to be in the right place at the right time. And it's very meaningful to me to be in this league. It's any fantasy hockey player's dream to be involved in something like this. And I am very excited to see where it goes. And so far, it's been great, life-changing, I would say.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think everyone I talked in this league has been so great. And as we started the new show, I really appreciate everyone who's reached out so far, and including yourself, who I know I had some of your Canucks on the not hot list last week, which probably you weren't too thrilled with. But I mean, what's going on in Vancouver? What's going on in your Canucks? They were hot, now they're not hot. You know, the Bruce chants, everything going on there. So are they gonna get back in the playoff spot here? What's the deal there?
Bruce, there it is. Yeah, I think that they have a legitimate chance to sneak in. I don't know if their defense is in pretty rough shape. We need to get Jack Rathbone up, in my opinion, which for the Outlaws, but also for the Canucks. Yeah, I think it might be tough, to be honest. I think they might be on the outside looking in, and maybe a guy like JT Miller might be going to your Rangers. Who knows?
Yeah, I know. I think Ranger fans would love to see him back. And you have a future blue on your team, and Brent Othman, who I think is going to be maybe making an appearance next year in New York, but he's certainly ripping up right now in the OHL.
Yeah, really happy with him. I feel really good about the two guys we drafted. Xavier Borgo was the other one. We got them back to back, and yeah, a little upset with him getting a bit of a snub for the World Juniors there, but I don't think it's going to phase him. I think he's going to be up there with you guys in no time.
He was just named, I believe, the captain of the Flint Firebirds there up in the OHL too. He's got something like 53 points in 30-something games. He's having a great year, and he was really impressive in training camp too. And his style of game kind of fits the NHL too, with his physical play as well as being able to get to the net. So hopefully he does get a chance in New York either next year or gets a chance in Hartford next year to showcase what he can do against men and professional players. But before I go, Brett Howden, another former Ranger in your team, are you worried that he's not going to score on the point this year since he's not playing the Rangers anymore?
Not at all. He's been very good depth player for us. He's got a cheap contract and he's put up 10 points. You can't really ask for much more. I mean, you can hope for more, but I think he's got a good fit there on the fourth line with Vegas. And I think he might be a bit of a pain for you guys when you see him game to game. At least you're done with him this year, though.
Yeah, he's got half his points this year against the Rangers. It's incredible. The guy, every time anyone leaves the Rangers, you can book it that they're going to score a goal next time they see him. We just had Tony DeAngelo is returning against the Rangers. I think he put up like 5 points against the Rangers this week. So, and Jesper Foss scored a goal too. So you can pretty much put any kind of money you want on a former Ranger coming back to haunt them. That's a guarantee. But Nick, thanks so much for joining us this week, and best luck to the Outlaws the rest of the way. And we'll definitely be rooting for you, and it's going to be a close battle there. A lot of really good teams all muddled up there in that 10 to 15 spot.
Thanks so much, Kyle. We look forward to the battle. We're going to try and claw our way up the standings and see what happens.
That's great. Good luck to your Canucks, too. I hope they lose the rest of their games and trade JT Miller to Rangers.
As long as we get someone good back like Kako, I wouldn't complain.
Well, thanks so much, buddy. We'll talk to you soon.
Cheers.
Thanks so much to Nick for coming on, taking the time. And now let's bring in Mr. Insider, Larry Fisher. Larry, how are we doing this week?
Hey, Kyle, great interview with Nick. You guys had a lot of good banter going there, but certainly the UFHL, the All-Stars front and center, as well as some trades to go over this week. So it's been another exciting week in the UFHL, and we're getting that much closer to the All-Star games. So a lot to digest on the All-Star front, including we named a couple captains this week. We did the Twitter poll, the vote to name captains for a couple divisions. So we got that news amongst other roster updates, projected rosters. I know last week you were disgruntled to say the least, or in dismay over the amount of snubs for the Rangers, and I think they got the memo. You must have sent something down to the dressing room because
I did.
They came out,
I sent some texts out. I said there's some disrespect going around the UFHL right now. I gotta send it to my guy Larry Fisher. Zero players are on the list, and when they do, they all respond this week.
Absolutely. You got a few anyway. A few played their way into the projected rosters when we take a look, Kyle. But certainly there's still 9 days to go before All-Star break in the NHL. So it's going to be interesting to see how that holds up for the Rangers, because there's a lot of roster battles. But we can start, Kyle, with the as mentioned, the captains of the Gretzky and Lemieux division. Based on Twitter poll results, the Gretzky division will be captained by Leon Draisaitl of the Grizzlies. And the Lemieux division will be captained by Connor McDavid of the Yetis. So the two Oilers superstars will be wearing the C for their All-Star division rosters in the upcoming inaugural UFHL All-Star game. Voting will continue this week, Kyle, with the Twitter polls to name captains for the OR and HOWE divisions. So exciting to see McDavid and Draisaitl, teammates in the NHL. Division or conference rivals in the UFHL and in that Allen Conference, representing the Draisaitl with the Gretzky division and McDavid with the Lemieux division.
Yeah, that's great. Draisaitl can't be pissy about that, right? I mean, being named captain of an all-star team is pretty good, but the Oilers, man, they are in turmoil out there. It is. You're up there in Canada. I'm sure you hear more than I do, but seems like every day something else comes out. So, but good to see the two. I mean, they are two bona fide superstars in both the NHL and UFHL. So, awesome to see them get that honor, and I'm sure their teams are thrilled to see that.
Yeah, that soundbite of the exchange between Hall of Fame reporter Jim Matheson and Leon Draisaitl certainly went viral, and I think it sparked Draisaitl. Obviously, he came out with a 4-point game, including the game-winning goal in the Battle of Alberta. So I think maybe lit a little bit of fueled the fire a bit for Draisaitl, and they needed that. They needed some adversity or some distraction away from the standings, and that maybe provided a bit of what they needed to get the team going again, in a big win over Calgary. We'll see how Edmonton takes it from here. But circling back to the UFHL and to the Gretzky division, we can take a closer look at the projected roster and how it's changed from last week in the Gretzky division. Obviously, that is where Leon Draisaitl's the captain. You got Nazem Kadri's looking like a lock, Mikko Rantanen, the Colorado teammates. And there you have it. Chris Kreider, one of your Rangers, has played his way in. He bumped out Kirill Kaprizov from Red Army. So Chris Kreider overtakes Kaprizov by the slightest of margins. But Anze Kopitar and Matt Duchene would make it as reps of their franchise. And then on defense, Moritz Seider, the rookie, actually is the top scoring defenseman for the Gretzky division. And oddly enough, or funny enough, Tony DeAngelo, former Ranger, bumped out John Carlson. They're less than a fantasy point apart, both members of the Godfathers. So the Godfathers are looking good to have a defenseman, at least one defenseman on the All-Star roster. But certainly DeAngelo overtaking John Carlson's a bit of a surprise just based on name value. And Rasmus Dahlin, a recent acquisition for the Monarchs, actually overtook Seth Jones. When you look at the snubs and the and the on the bubble for the Gretzky division. Certainly in goal, you got another Ranger, Igor Shesterkin. That's Red Army's lone representative as of now, with Kirill Kaprizov getting bumped out. And then Thatcher Demko would get the backup spot there as the Can West Generals lone rep as well, even though Sergei Bobrovsky would be the snub there. So when you take a look at the Gretzky division for who's on the bubble and who's been snubbed, that's always interesting as well. You got in and out, who's in, who's out this week. You got Chris Kreider, Tony DeAngelo, and Rasmus Dahlin are in. Out is Kirill Kaprizov, John Carlson, and Seth Jones. And then the guys that would have potentially made this roster, if not for having to have a representative from each franchise, you're looking at Kirill Kaprizov and Ryan Hartman, 2 Minnesota Wild forwards. John Carlson on defense obviously would be ahead of Rasmus Dahlin if the Monarchs didn't need a rep. And then Sergei Bobrovsky would be backing up Igor Shesterkin if not for Thatcher Demko having to be there for the Generals. So very interesting roster shakeup in the Gretzky division with 3 in and 3 out this week. Any thoughts there, Kyle? Obviously, you're happy to see Chris Kreider in there and Shesterkin still holding the crease.
Yeah, deservingly so. Kreider leads the NHL in goals now, and I think Tony DeAngelo playing the Rangers and getting about 17 points against them the other night probably boosted him up. I think it was the first match. Yeah, it was the first matchup against Carolina this year, so they'll see him a couple more times. So I gotta think Tony D's gonna put up a lot more points because he's got a lot to prove against that franchise. But yeah, by the way, these graphics this week, Michelle put them together. Thank you so much because they are so much better than the ones that I was putting together, and they're doing a great job of showing what Larry's talking about opposed to me. But yeah, no, I mean, you look at the Kaprizov now on the outside looking in. I mean, that's a huge name. I think that fans would probably expect to see in an All-Star game, and Bobrovsky also on the outside looking in. So there's some big names there sitting there on the bubble.
And it's close. You look 9 more days of NHL action before these rosters are finalized, and Kreider's only a point ahead of Kaprizov. So, I mean, that could flip very easily. And I mean, even guys like Rantanen isn't that far clear of Kaprizov either. So it'll be interesting these last 9 days to see where we sit come next week's episode. Again, if there's more shakeup in the Gretzky division. You look at the Lemieux division, Kyle. McDavid, obviously a lock there. And then it gets interesting. You got Gabriel Landeskog actually moved ahead of Austin Matthews in fantasy points this week. Both members of the Blades of Steel. And then there's another Ranger playing his way onto the team, Mika Zibanejad, as well as Joe Pavelski from the Ice Vikings. But you got to like Mika Zibanejad actually bumping out Tom Wilson. There's a storyline there within the UFHL. Although,
there we go.
Yeah, and Zibanejad and Wilson are
things you love to see.
Vikings.
Things you love to see right there, Larry.
Yeah, we cheered you up from last week, that's for sure. On there, Jesper Bratt is another one of those who's having a big year for the Devils, big year for the Blizzard. 131 fantasy points, which is impressive. But obviously, he's getting a spot as the Blizzard's representative. There would be other players ahead of him. And you look at the defenders, you can keep smiling, Kyle, because Adam Fox has actually bumped out Roman Josi. They're less than a fantasy point apart. And one of those two is going to get snubbed in the UFHL All-Star game because Alex Pietrangelo is going to be the Eliminators rep and Devin Tays has to be the Warriors rep. So Fox and Roman Josi are battling it out to see who gets that final spot on the blue line for the Lemieux division. And then in goal, Tristan Jarry actually caught up to and is a half a fantasy point ahead of UC Saros as the goaltending leader in the UFHL. Saros has an even 170 and Tristan Jarry's at 170.52 thanks to his shootout win over Winnipeg on the weekend. So Frederick Anderson's pretty locked in as the backup there in the Lemieux division. You look at the snubs and who's in, who's out for the Lemieux division, as well as who's on the bubble. You got certainly Adam Fox, Mika Zibanejad, and Joe Pavelski are in. 2 Rangers are in. On the outside looking in now are Roman Josi, Tom Wilson, and Jake Gensel was the other player that got bumped out. You look at the snubs. Again, Jake Gensel would have made it ahead of Jesper Bratt, obviously, but because there needs to be a rep from every franchise, Adam Fox gets in there as the Stingrays rep, and Jake Gensel gets bumped out as a result. And then certainly Roman Josi, he's right in the conversation for the Norris this year. He'd be on the outside looking in. The Kryptonites to be represented by Frederick Anderson in goal. And on the bubble, there you see Tom Wilson and Brady Tkachuk. So the Ice Vikings They're coming on strong. They've forced their way into the top 10, kicked down the door this week, overtaking the Battlehawks. And certainly Tom Wilson, Brady Tkachuk are battling it out with Joe Pavelski and Mika Zibanejad, as well as guys like Jake Gensel. So a lot of competition for spots in the Lemieux division.
Ice Vikings can't be too mad, though. 2 guys in, 2 guys out. At least it's Ice Viking crime on each other, not taking anyone else away. But yeah, you gotta love Zibanejad kicking out Tom Wilson. Absolutely. And my guy Adam Fox in this spot now.
Yeah, and it's so close. Like I said, 9 more days of NHL games. It's going to be interesting to see where this stands on the night of February 2nd. It's a Tuesday. It will be February 2nd. That's when the final games before the All-Star break. That's where the fantasy points will obviously cap to determine who's on those rosters. Come the February 6th, the day after the NHL All-Star game, we'll do the UFHL All-Star tournament, hopefully on NHL 22, an esports type tournament. But certainly we can keep going through the projected rosters. Heading into the OR division, Kyle, here you got Timo Meier, who obviously had the 5-goal game this week. He had such a big night for San Jose and for Rock Republic. Rock Republic has the top 2 forwards right now with Timo Meier and Sebastian Aho. Andrei Svechnikov heated up this week. He's really played his way. The Aho-Svechnikov dynamic duo will be on display in the UFHL All-Star game. He'll be there as Strong Islands rep. And then you got 3 of those players that the franchise needs a rep. So Rupe Hintz of the Brutes, Riley Smith of the Assassins, and Jeff Skinner of Duckman's Domination. And there's a story for you. Jeff Skinner might have 20 goals by the All-Star game in the NHL this year. Who saw that bounce back happening? Still looks a little out of place on an All-Star roster, the much maligned Jeff Skinner. And the funny thing here, Kyle, is barring Dougie Hamilton coming back and barring Colton Parayko heating up, it's likely going to be a battle between Jeff Skinner and Phil Kessel to be Duckman's Domination's All-Star rep. 2 guys that will look, 2 talented guys who've had great careers, but aren't necessarily thought of in the All-Star light in the present. On defense, you got the Titans 1-2 punch with Mackenzie Weegar and Cale Makar, and Makar's potentially overtaking Weegar as the top defenseman for the OR division, but Weegar hits so many categories. And there you see another Rangers played his way onto the team, onto the OR division All-Star roster this week with Jacob Trouba making his way in on defense, which is another Ranger rep. So they really got the message. And Trouba had a big week. I mean, he's right on look at the points there. He's right hot on the tail of Cale Makar. He's less than a point behind Cale Makar. So that shows you how many categories Trouba hits in the UFHL and how big of an impact he had this week with the Rangers. And no change in goal as expected. Andrei Vasilevsky and Jack Campbell are the 1-2 punch for the OR division. But when we look at the who's in, who's out for the OR division, as well as snubs and on the bubble, there you see Jacob Trouba and Jeff Skinner are in. And ironically, the way it worked, Kamikaze rep was bumped out. Trouba got in for Dougie Hamilton, so Kamikaze and Duckman's trading spots. And then also with the forwards, Jeff Skinner actually gets in ahead of Vladimir Tarasenko, which puts Tarasenko on the snub list because he's having a huge year. Patrice Bergeron and Marcus Foligno would also make the cut based on fantasy points, but they're on the outside lutking in under the snubs because of every franchise needing to be represented. And look at the Titans on the bubble. That's where their depth really shows.
It's basically the entire Titans team out there, yeah.
It is. Former Ranger Pavel Buchnevich, you got William Nylander, David Pasternak's been heating up, and Morgan Riley. And when you look at it, they're only, that 15 points kind of behind. So they have a big run. Any of those guys have a big run over these last 9 days leading into the All-Star break. And the Titans could certainly add a rep up front potentially as well. Or Morgan Riley's a bit of a threat to Jacob Trouba on the back end as well. But that's how the OR division is stacking up on paper through this week with a couple changes.
Yeah, Trouba's had a huge week. He's been great for the Rangers. He's living up to that contract right now. He's been hitting people. I feel like the controversy around him is his hits this year. He's been crushing people. The true train, as he's known now in Rangers country. And the guy he's been shooting the puck a lot better this year too. And last year was something that he was shooting the puck and not hitting the net. And this year he's doing that. So really paying off for the Rangers. And also in fantasy points as well, obviously, with him. He's going to jump Makar by the time the playoffs come. He's high. He's red hot right now. He's feeling it.
And like I said, those big hits, obviously the McKinnon and Jujhar Khaira hits back-to-back nights were huge, but he's been such a physical force. And you need that with some high skill guys on the Rangers blue line and some young guys. You need Trouba out there leading the way physically. Last but not least, Kyle, the HOWE division, and this has really become the powerhouse division in the UFHL as far as when you look at the all-star rosters and the amount of guys that are on the bubble compared to other divisions. But Alex Ovechkin and Jonathan Huberdeau, they're right up there at the top of the UFHL scoring list. They're obviously locks. Ovechkin, there's going to be a vote on who's the captain of this division, but I mean, it'd be hard to go against Ovechkin. Although, I mean, you got Stamkos in there too in the vote potentially. You got guys like Victor Hedman, but you go up and down that list. On paper, this looks like the team to beat for me in the UFHL All-Star game with Ovechkin, Huberdeau, Stamkos, Brad Marchand. There's JT Miller, trade speculation surrounding him, but he's been the Gators' top forward. We'll look at some guys who are hot on JT Miller's heels, though, leading into this, like I said, final 9 days to the All-Star break. Drake Batherson gets in as the Tornadoes rep. Still same as last week. Victor Hedman. The interesting one here is Chris Letang battling it out with Aaron Ekblad on the blue line. They're very close, and only one of them are likely to get in. Although also the goaltending is very close now with UC Saros locked in as the starter, but Jacob Markstrom trying to hold off Darcy Kemper of the Bentley Jacks. And if Darcy Kemper made it over Markstrom with Colorado going hot right now, then he'd be the Bentley Jacks rep. And obviously Charlie McAvoy might fall out in exchange for Aaron Ekblad there on the blue line. So when you look at who's in, who's out, and who's snubs on the bubble for the HOWE division, obviously the big change was on the blue line with Chris Letang in and Aaron Ekblad out. Even though Aaron Ekblad had a huge week as well, Chris Letang's just, he's such a consistent performer for Pittsburgh and back to his old primed form as the Penguins continue to come on strong with Malkin and everybody back now. The snubs is interesting. Tanner Jeanette is actually, he would be the one if Drake Batherson wasn't in as of today as the Tornadoes rep and you went strictly on fantasy points, the Nashville rookie Tanner Jeanette would be the sixth forward for this powerhouse HOWE division. And obviously Aaron Ekblad would be in ahead of Charlie McAvoy as of now. And then on the bubble, look at the size of that on the bubble in the HOWE division. A lot can change here. Guys like Nathan McKinnon, Matthew Tkachuk, those two in particular are right there chasing down, within 5 points of JT Miller for that final forward spot. So JT Miller has actually been in COVID protocol, I believe, this week. So it'll be interesting to see if McKinnon or Tkachuk can steal that final forward spot for the Royals or the Gators. But a lot of guys within striking distance, as you look down the list, even Artemi Panarin, he's approximately 15 points behind, but a big 9-day stretch, and Panarin could play his way into the All-Star game for the HOWE division ahead of JT Miller potentially as well. And then, as we mentioned in goal, you got Jacob Markstrom at 125.94 fantasy points, but you got Darcy Kemper, Ilya Sorokin, and Robin Lane are all still within striking distance. Likely the biggest threat there is Darcy Kemper to potentially represent the Bentley Jacks if Colorado keeps going strong. But that's how the HOWE division is shaping up with 9 days to go and basically a week and a half until the NHL All-Star break.
Just looks weird with no McKinnon on the roster, There's some major names, like you said, Panarin, Tkachuk. McKinnon. There's major names on that list. So the bubble there, that's a hot bubble.
It is. And as mentioned, some of these guys are going hot. McKinnon's obviously missed a lot of time with injury. He'd be on that list, especially with how many shots he generates too. That's helps his fantasy point total. So I think McKinnon's if you had to take a bet on, I think McKinnon and Tkachuk could both push to get on that roster. And even a guy like David Pastrnak, when you look back at the Orr division, I think he's going hot lately. He's been scoring a lot more after a slow start. So I wouldn't be surprised if he plays his way on. And a lot can change in a week, as we've seen. I think there's a total of, what do we got here? We got 6, 8, 9 changes from 1 week to the next out of the 44 All-Stars representing the UFHL. 9 of them changed from 1 week to the next. So we'll see what next week brings on the All-Star front.
Yeah, and we also had a handful of trades that went down this last week, Larry. So let's recap those and talk about some of the movements that happened this last week.
Yeah, the Royals reloading to take another run at the Titans, Kyle. Obviously, the Titans were really pulling away atop the standings, and it got to the point where I think Arnie and Brent, the management group with the Royals, said, we can't let them just run away with the title. We got to put up a fight here. And then they made a few moves, and they actually started closing the gap. It got as high as, I think, a 160-point gap, now back to a 125-point gap on top. So the moves are working. The Royals went out and acquired Valerie Nichushkin as sort of their big ringer from the Kamikaze. Gave up Martin Kott, Jack Studnicka, and a little over 1,000 USD. So a steep price to pay, but Valerie Nichushkin comes in, scores a power play goal and gets a primary assist on the overtime winner in his Royals debut, as tends to happen, Kyle. Trades in the UFHL, they tend to spark their franchise, and then Nichushkin coming out of COVID protocols gets, like I said, power play goal and assist on the overtime winner. Big debut for him for the Royals. But again, 2 quality prospects and more than $1,000 for Nichushkin, who's at $2.5 million, but a pending UFA. He's likely going to get a nice, at least double his salary cap hit for next season. You touched on the Ryan Lomberg also going to the Royals from the Mystics in exchange for Nick Ritchie, Liam Foodie, and John Farinacci. Again, Lomberg hits a lot of categories in the UFHL. As you mentioned, he's sort of an energizer bunny guy, lots of shots, lots of hits and penalty minutes, a guy that really fills up the stat sheet. Ritchie hasn't been thriving in his Toronto homecoming. Also a $2.5 million cap hit on Nick Ritchie. So Ritchie out, Nichushkin in, that sort of, they didn't take on any cap space or take on any salary, the Royals. So some good asset management there. You look at the actual packages, though, and the players that are coming back. I think most people would take a look at that and say those are overpayments on both fronts. But again, the Royals aren't going to watch the Titans run away with the title. Nichushkin and Lomberg are going to offer some pushback, as they already have. They make the Royals deeper up front, and the Royals have been chipping away at that Titans lead since adding these reinforcements. But on the flip side, Kyle, I think just real nice returns for Kamikaze on Nichushkin and the Mystics on Lomberg. I think they both extracted great value from the Royals. They have to be thrilled with those returns, whether you're Donnie Talk with Kamikaze or Colin Mills with the Mystics. And I think the other potential sellers have to love those returns too, Kyle, because prices are high around the league right now with so many playoff contenders. There's more buyers than sellers. We're still, essentially 2 months from the UFHL trade deadline on March 21st. Here we are on January 24th. So basically 2 months to go. Lots of franchises would like to upgrade. That's what I'm hearing. Nick Uttley said it to you. If the move's there, they'd like to make a move and maybe push into the Ice Vikings and Battlehawks, push them for a top 10 spot. They were a top 10 franchise last year, the Outlaws. So the potential is there to get back in there or potentially turn the page and look more to the future because the prices are so high. But lots of franchises would like to upgrade, but not liking the asking prices. And when you see deals like this go down with, returns like Kott and Studnicka and over 1,000 USD for a guy like Valerie Nichushkin and, Ryan Lomberg, great role player, but, Nick Ritchie, technically a similar type player. A year ago, people would say Lomberg was a poor man's Ritchie. Now you're giving up Ritchie, Foodie, and Farinacci, although the cap savings there with Lomberg to Ritchie is nice as well. But big packages to give up, and time will tell, Kyle, whether those prices come down before March 21st trade deadline or if they only get higher as the bidding war heats up for any players that are available in the UFHL.
Yeah, I mean, Nick said it. He said the prices are high for everything. We've seen that in the last couple of weeks with the trade packages that we're seeing. A lot of prospects being done, a lot of like 4 and 3 and 5 and 6 assets for 1 or 2 assets. So people are paying high prices right now. But like the Royals had to make a move, though. I mean, the Titans right now are a powerhouse there. They've been leading for, I think, since November they've been in first place, right? We've featured them last week of their rise to power here, but the Royals need to do something to get it done. And the Kamikaze are a team that are right there, right outside the top 5. So to see them pull that move, obviously it was something that they really liked to part with that, level of player to send to a team above them in the standings. So interesting move, interesting week. And we had 2 other small moves as well involving Brendan Smith, a guy who I like and has become more of a depth defenseman there in Carolina.
Yeah, Brendan Smith on the move from Red Army to Kamikaze, and there's one where again another depth defenseman. But as you mentioned and you highlighted really effectively with Rock Republic, is maximizing games played. Kamikaze, no surprise that Donnie Talk and Kyle Roberts, the GMs from owners from Kamikaze and Rock Republic, they used to be in the same group. Originally, Rock Republic had a 5-man ownership group. Then Donnie Talk was part of that group. He branched out, bought Kamikaze, went on his own, and kind of still uses that playbook that they obviously designed together for Rock Republic to maximize games played. So little history on the UFHL there with the Rock Republic ownership group, Donnie Talk leaving, purchasing Kamikaze, and sort of using that ability to maximize games played. And Brendan Smith, like you said, is going to chip in fantasy points. He's not the biggest name, but he's gonna help Kamikaze. And ironically, Kamikaze's chasing down Rock Republic, trying to battle for that, get into the top 5. So a cool little rivalry there within the UFHL between Rock Republic and Kamikaze. The other trade this week that of significance, in my opinion, was the Bentley Jacks acquiring Danton Heinen. And obviously the Bentley Jacks just made the big blockbuster for Nikita Kucherov, who's, I think Kucherov's already up to 60 fantasy points. I mean, give him a couple more weeks.
Incredible.
He might have made the All-Star game. You give him a couple more weeks, but he's tearing it up since his return. So great move by the Bentley Jacks there. But they acquired Danton Heinen as another, middle 6 forward, really determined to make the playoffs in their expansion season, and they just keep making moves to get better in the present and also for the playoffs. Danton Heinen, as we said, the trend is they make an immediate impact. Danton Heinen recorded an assist in his Bentley Jacks debut on Sunday, setting up his new Bentley Jacks teammate, Kasperi Kapanen. So the Bentley Jacks reunite some line mates there from Pittsburgh, and Heinen and Kapanen through this trade. And again, the expansion franchise just keeps getting better, continuing to upgrade. And I think Heinen is another nice piece for their playoff push. They're currently occupying the second wildcard spot in the Legends Conference, ahead of the Mystics, Brutes, Assassins, and Dynasty. Those are among the playoff contenders within 200 points of a wildcard spot in the Legends Conference. But right now, the Outlaws have the first wildcard spot, and the Bentley Jacks have the second wildcard spot. And the Bentley Jacks are continuing to improve and add and upgrade. So it's going to be hard to catch the Outlaws and the Bentley Jacks for those wildcard spots. On the flip side, Strong Island, they receive Jonathan Dolan and Lucas Alvinus as the return for Danton Heinen. Strong Island seems to be tapping out for this season, but really working to improve their depth in the future to sort of compete with that next man up mentality that Nick Uttley highlighted, that you talked about with Rock Republic, Kamikaze, some of these franchises, especially during these COVID times, and certainly among the forward group for Strong Island. Depth is crucial in the UFHL, and that's what's held Strong Island back. They have the star power, their top 6, their top 4, their starting goaltender, everything. They got the core pieces, but they need the depth. And adding guys like Jonathan Dolan and Lucas Alvinus could certainly help depth-wise. Dolan started strong in San Jose. He's cooled off lately, which is probably why the Bentley Jacks were willing to move him and saw Danton Heinen as an upgrade. But still, obviously, an NHL caliber forward with upside for future seasons in Jonathan Dolan. And this really looks like it could be a win-win trade going forward. But Heinen is the best player in the trade as of today, and the Bentley Jacks, again, focused on making the playoffs in their inaugural season, much like the Vegas Golden Knights did. Unlike the Seattle Kraken, who obviously the Bentley Jacks are our version of the Seattle Kraken here in the Ultimate Fantasy Hockey League. And lastly, there, Lucas Alvinus, and a bit of an interesting story, Kyle. He's been on fire in the AHL since getting claimed by Anaheim. He was actually on his way home to Sweden. It was going to be, his contract was going to be terminated. He was on unconditional waivers for the purpose of terminating his contract so he could go home to Sweden. He was tired of, spinning his tires in the AHL and maybe not getting the opportunity in Vegas. Anaheim steps up, claims him. Now he's starring for San Diego Gulls. Instead of heading home to Sweden, he's been really good, looking like a potential call-up candidate for Anaheim. So Dolan and Alvinus could be in the future as next man up for Strong Island, but Danton Heinen will certainly benefit the Bentley Jacks down the stretch.
I think the Bentley Jacks are taking a page out of Neil Smith's GM book there, where they're just trading left and right, that team. Every week I feel like we hear a rumor about them or they're making a big trade. So very exciting team to watch. Obviously, they're, like you said, pushing for a playoff spot in their first year, but a great job by that management team, going from the expansion draft to where they are now. You got to tip your cap to them and all the hard work they've done this season to get themselves in that playoff position.
And there is a GM of the Year award at stake in the UFHL as well. The franchises vote on that. Yourself and me and myself might have a bit of a say as well, but certainly Brennan Kopp of the Bentley Jacks, his work leading up to that expansion draft, being able to get guys like Patrick Kane and now Nikita Kucherov, like no expansion franchise could even dream of having franchise players like that in year one. So certainly Brennan Kopp's in the mix for that GM of the Year award. I know Nick Uttley threw out Kyle Roberts from Rock Republic as well. There's a lot of smart hockey minds, a lot of good GMs, and a lot of guys that just are active. Like Nick also threw out Scott Lowater, right, as from the Yetis. And maybe the Yetis will be a team to watch going forward because they've been slumping a bit in the standings. And in the preseason power rankings, the Yetis were supposed to be, projected as a top 3 team. I think they had the most first place votes from the preseason power rankings, and they've been slumping a bit. So it'll be interesting to see if Scott Lowater starts shaking things up for the Yetis. But certainly a lot of candidates for the GM of the Year award, and the Bentley Jacks have one in Brennan Kopp. He'll be in that mix, probably fairly high on the ballot, I would imagine. And then lastly, Kyle, one thing I wanted to highlight was the Stingrays, another franchise that doesn't sit around Arlo Schultz. He's an aggressive GM and not afraid to make moves. You look at what Valerie Nichushkin cost there with $1,000 USD plus. Arlo Schultz and the Stingrays sort of set that market by going out and getting Braden Shen for that price point. So that was sort of the first move using Scorecoin as a trade asset. And we always use the USD equivalent of, around 1,000 USD. But using that Scorecoin as trade currency in the UFHL is something that's different than the NHL. You can use sort of cash considerations. The Stingrays are willing to do that, as we've seen from recent moves. And I think they're looking to upgrade again as well, Kyle. They did a bit of a shakeup this week as far as depth forwards go and freed up some cap space. They promoted Michael McCarron from the protected list and waived Alex Galchenyuk. And then they claimed Dominic Toninato, Winnipeg forward, off waivers and waived Oscar Sundqvist. So you look at that, McCarron and Toninato in, Galchenyuk and Sundqvist out. On paper, you'd think that's a downgrade, at least in terms of name value, not necessarily in terms of fantasy points per game or fantasy production, but name value. Galchenyuk and Sundqvist are bigger names than McCarron and Toninato. But what the Stingrays did here is they freed up $2 million in cap space by swapping Sundqvist at $2.75 million for Toninato, who has $750K league minimum contract. And he was claimed from the Mystics for the minimum. So a cheap depth move there for Dominic Toninato. But really, by shedding Oscar Sundqvist, now the Stingrays have $2 million in cap space. And I reached out to Stingrays owner and GM Arlo Schultz, and he did admit that this is a precursor to more moves. They needed the cap space. And I would expect the Stingrays to spend that $2 million on another roster upgrade, obviously before the March 21st trade deadline, but potentially sooner than later. And as the trend, we can't forget about the trend of making immediate impacts, Kyle. Michael McCarron actually fought Tyler Myers in his Stingrays debut, or his first game after that call-up, after his promotion from the protected list to the active roster. And Dominic Toninato also assisted on a Jansen Harkins goal in his Stingrays debut after being claimed from the Mystics. So the immediate impact continues. Alex Galchenyuk was lost on waivers to the Eliminators, and Oscar Sundqvist was claimed on waivers by the Godfathers. And that was a bit of a bidding war. Godfathers emerging victorious over the Battlehawks in the Blizzard for Oscar Sundqvist, who can certainly add some fantasy value at $2.75 million, just not the right fit for the Stingrays. They had previously actually acquired Oscar Sundqvist straight up for Josh Bailey. So they went from Josh Bailey to Oscar Sundqvist to Dominic Toninato. But again, cap space is going there. You got Bailey at over $5 million, down to 2.75, down to $750K league minimum. That cap space is going to be redeployed by the Stingrays. So keep an eye on the Stingrays this coming week and leading up to the All-Star break.
All right, that's great information there. And the Stingrays are battling there in the top 10. I believe they're in the 8th spot right now. They just dropped one spot down. The Gators passed them into the 7th spot. So they're a team that's obviously right there in the mix and has been kind of in that jumble of the 5 to 10, the bottom 5. They're in the top 10 the last couple weeks. But Larry, anything else before we let you go this week?
That's all for this week, Kyle. Like I said, looking forward to seeing what happens this coming week with the All-Star, because so many of those, when you really look at those fantasy points, there's a lot of guys that got bumped out by less than a point, or guys are within 5 points of making it. So it's going to be interesting. In the NHL, they have nothing to prove, right? Because those All-Star rosters have already been revealed. But in the UFHL, it goes right till February 2nd, the last day before the All-Star breaks, where we cut it off and name our official All-Stars. So next Monday, we'll have close to official. There'll still be 2 more nights worth of games, but really looking forward to seeing if your Rangers can hold down their spots on these All-Star rosters.
Yeah, I hope so. They showed up this week. Let's hope I think they have 4 games this week coming up, so they'll definitely have plenty of opportunities to keep their spots and to. I think every single guy made it, right? I don't think there's one more guy in the Panarin's on the bubble, but I think every guy we thought about last week is now in position. So pretty crazy. And like you said, a lot of changes this last week. So it should be exciting. Final week in a couple of days here for the All-Star voting. I know all the organizations are really excited for this inaugural All-Star event, and it should be a really cool thing for everybody.
For sure, yeah. To see Kreider, Fox, Trouba, you name it. The Rangers were on fire this week, and like I said, hopefully they can keep it going. And it's going to be a lot of fun to see who ends up making these all-star rosters and how we do the gameplay, which is still to be determined, and ironing that out as well. But good opportunity to promote the UFHL. Great job on the uniforms by Andrea Karanda, especially to see Draisaitl and McDavid as their division captains in uniform. And certainly, Michelle, as you mentioned, the graphics, great work on the graphics to really highlight who's on the projected roster, who's in, who's out, who's sort of on the bubble, and who unfortunately is getting snubbed as of now. So we'll revisit all that again next week, Kyle, and looking forward to it.
Sounds good. Yeah, and this week's we'll have the voting on for the All-Star captains this week for the other two divisions. So be on the outlook of that from the UFHL Sports or UFHL Twitter account as well for that. But Larry, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, Kyle. Have a good one.
And before we leave today, we do want to go over our Twitter polls. And last week's Twitter poll, we'll start off first. We actually already cat came out of the bag there of our captains for the LEMIEUX and GRETZKY divisions, with Leon Draisaitl being named the captain of the GRETZKY division from the Grizzlies, and Connor McDavid of the Yetis being named the LEMIEUX division. So to be in the outlook for the two other divisional polls going up this week for their captains. So should be a good race there for the other two. And then this week's Twitter poll, in addition to that, we want to pose to you which former Norris Trophy winning defenseman is going to finish this year more fantasy points. Pretty crazy. We have Adam Fox, Victor Hedman, and Roman Josi all at 180 fantasy points. So which one of these three superstar defensemen ends the year with more fantasy points? I know I got to lean towards my guy Adam Fox, but three extremely talented players there. The Stingrays, Mystics, and Crypto Knights must be thrilled to have these guys on their team. So go on UFHL Twitter and vote now, or vote today, on who you think is going to be the top defenseman of the year. And that does it for this week on the UFHL Now. You can find us on Twitter at the UFHL. You can check out the scouting and UFF Sports. If you have any information or any questions for the show, please reach out on info@uffsports.com. And of course, please check out the website, check out the league at uffsports.com. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us.